Hello, I've returned already. Nice to see you. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I read this year. Now, don't think it's going to be a lot. It's only 31 books. So for today, I'm going to mention all of the books briefly, give a couple thoughts, let you know if they're good or bad, who knows. And then if there are any books in particular that you want me to review, like make a full video, let me know. I'd be more than happy to do that because I have all the time in the world. Kind of, sort of. Also, do you see the background? I have so many pretty lights. I went to work this morning and I came home and Albert set this up for me, and you know, that's how you know you have a good one, you know? Anyway, on with the video. So first off, I read a book called Sea of Treason, Pirate's Bluff. I believe it's the first book in a series. It's by Stacey Tremblay. This is a book about pirates. It's a young adult. I believe I read it on Kindle Unlimited. It was cute and it was good for what it was, which is something entertaining that I really needed. It was a little light and fluffy. It was more of a YA romance than anything, and I did enjoy it though, because those books tend to just make me happy in the moment when I'm reading them, and I found it very entertaining, and I really wanted to read the second book. I don't know why I didn't though. I still plan to because it was very entertaining, and I think if you are looking for a read that just pulls you in, keeps you entertained for a really good evening, and makes you feel happy inside, then this could be one. I mean, definitely it's about pirates and there is a lot of action and whatnot, so it's not just a feel-good book, it's more of an action book than anything, but I really did enjoy it. So that was the first book I read. Moving on, I'm holding my laptop so I can see what I've read, by the way, so if you see me looking down, I apologize. The next book that I read is called Sadistic Animals by David Allen Jacobs. This is a self-published book and it came out, I think, the beginning of this year or maybe the end of last year. I'm not entirely sure, but I own a physical copy of this book. I actually know the author personally. He gave me his book and said if I could leave a review for it, and this is a horror novel for starters. It is dark, it is gritty, it is not something for the faint of heart. It is very, very strange. It's not like anything you've really read before. It did give me Animal Farm sort of vibes, if Animal Farm was a horror novel, and it just goes in a completely different direction than you would expect, and I very much so enjoyed it, but it's not for everyone, so I wouldn't necessarily flat out recommend it. But I think if you love the bizarre, the strange, if you love really interesting metaphors and things that sometimes don't even make sense, I think give this a read, because it's a really quick read, but it's very dark and gritty, like I said. So if you love horror, maybe give it a read. Next, I read The Forever Sea by Joshua Philip Johnson, and I did review this one, I'm pretty sure. Right before I stopped filming videos, I read and reviewed this, and I loved this book so much. It's so good. I will link my review in the description below. If you haven't read this, I really recommend it because it's fantasy, but it's such unique fantasy, and the world and the descriptions of this book is just so mesmerizing, and oh, it's so good. Please read this if you haven't. After that, I read a book called The Sun Guardian Part 1 by Leonard Samuels. This was also a book that was sent to me by the author, and I believe it is also independently published. It's the first book in a series. This was highly entertaining, super engrossing, such a fun ride, and if you like anything to do with DC, Marvel, Avengers, anything like that, it reminds me of that so much in book form. It's different, obviously, it's not the same, the story is different, blah blah blah, but the feeling that you get when watching those films, you get that when reading this book, so it was really, really good. It also kind of reminded me of The World of Cinder by Marissa Meyer, and I think that's the science fiction aspect of it maybe, and the spaceness of it. I don't really know, but this was really good, and I was supposed to review it a while ago and I didn't, so I might do that soon. Next, I read Wrath by John Gwynne, which is the fourth and final book in the Faithful and the Fallen series. John Gwynne is an author who I fell in love with in the last year or two, and his writing is just incredible. Every once in a while I think about his books, I pick one up, I read a couple passages, because that world, that author, man, he knows how to write, and his books are so good. I reviewed the series, I believe, so you can check that out if you want. His books are fantasy, they are so well crafted and well written, and they're not necessarily the most unique thing you've ever read before. It does have very stereotypical tropes here and there, but at the same time it doesn't matter because it's written with such heart and with such passion that the book is just so alive and wonderful when you read it, and just just read John Gwynne if you haven't, please do. Next I read, you're gonna see a lot of John Gwynne. So he has another series that takes place in the same world after this series, and it's called, I believe, The Banished Lands, maybe, I could be wrong, but this is called A Time of Dread by John Gwynne. This is the first in a trilogy. I read this shortly after this, loved it, amazing. And then I read A Time of Blood by John Gwynne, which is the second book in the trilogy, and then I read A Time of Courage, which is the third book in the trilogy. And again, so good. It's so hard to pick favorites when it comes to John Gwynne because the first characters in the Faithful and the Fallen series were just so compelling, so memorable, but then they were too in this series as well, in this trilogy. So I can't tell you, you know, what's my favorite necessarily, but I can tell you that you have to read his books if you haven't, so please go do that. After that, I read a hunker of a book, and that is The Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. Yeah, this book took me forever to read. This is a honker, and yes, I will say it is a good book overall. I understand why everyone loved it so much, but at the same time, it was kind of a little underwhelming. And I don't say underwhelming in the sense that it wasn't, the story wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be or whatnot. The story was good, it just was a little slow in some parts. Like, I felt like Samantha Shannon could have cut a little bit here, a little bit there. This chapter may not have been necessary. I don't know, maybe that's just me. It was good overall, but you know, I don't know. After that, I read Scar by Michael Cole. This is about a shark killing a bunch of people, obviously, except that this shark is it's part great white, part megalodon, because its DNA was spliced and it was man-made. And so that's the premise of this book, and it was really good. I mean, good in the sense that it's entertaining. If you know what you're getting into, you're gonna love it. And if you read this at random, of course it's not well written. You know, I love sharks. If you watch my videos, you know I have a weird obsession with sharks and anything like that, so it's great. If you love horror, if you love sharks, if you love any sort of deep sea thrillers, this is for you. After that, more John Gwynne. I read The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, which is the first book in his new series, which takes place in a completely different world and follows gods and is a completely different storyline. And I really want to film a separate review on The Shadow of the Gods because it was so good. It's my new favorite by him. I don't have a full-on favorite, but it's definitely my new favorite. And I think the second book comes out sometime at the beginning of 2022, so I'm so excited. After that, I read Fable by Adrienne Young. This is a young adult book that somewhat has to do with pirates, and we follow this young girl, and it's a shabackle of a story. It's very swashbuckling. There is also romance, and it was really good. I like this one a lot. I think if you are getting into pirate books and you want something fun and a little cute and a little actiony, this is for you. It was really, really good. I love this one. After that, I read Hangs a Man by Shirley Jackson, and this is really good. It's classic Shirley Jackson. The story is a little bit slower than most, and it is more on the psychological side, but man, I really, really love this book. I highly recommend it. After that, I got into Junji Ito. This one is called Gaio? I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry, I'm so sorry. But this one is his story that follows this little seaside town and things go wrong. This is also a graphic novel. I don't know if you know that. His graphic novels, his stories, his pictures are absolutely horrifying. They stay in your mind and they eat away and you think about them and they give you the creeps. And I've read more than this by him already. I really fell in love with this author recently, and my gosh, his artwork, incredible. Stunning, but stunningly scary at the same time. After that, I read Super Tide by Stephen F. Freeman. This is a end of the world apocalyptic survival story following a mega tsunami. I have a weird thing with like survival end of the world stories. I love that. Any sort of end of the world movies, I also love that. I think it's the thrill of it that really gets me, and this one was no different. I highly recommend it if you like San Andreas, you know, the movie with The Rock and stuff like that. If you like that, you'll like this. After that, I read a book called Child of the Daystar by Bryce O'Connor. This one was really fun. It's the beginning of another fantasy series that I read on Kindle Unlimited, and I didn't continue on with this series. I'm kind of sad that I didn't, because I really loved the main character of the story. The main character is not a human. He's actually this part human, part lizard. In a sense, it's a revenge story more than anything, and a good revenge story is always fun. I would love to pick up the second book, but I don't know if I will, but I'll try. After that, I read Deep Light by Frances Hardinge. I don't know how to pronounce names. This book was so good. I believe it's young adult. If you love Pirates of the Caribbean and if you particularly love Davy Jones, this story in a sense makes you feel like not necessarily the story of Davy Jones, but it gives you those vibes and that atmosphere. And I'm not going to say anything else besides that, but this book was so good. Very unexpected, very random. It was a random pickup, but I'm really happy that I bought it and that I read it because it was really good. After that, I read Uzumaki, which is another Junji Ito, and this is his one story, his graphic novel that follows the circles. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but he has a story where the entire town becomes consumed by these spirals, and I don't even know how to properly explain it, but it is horrifying. And anytime I look at a spiral now, I think of this story and I get a little because it makes you feel so uncomfortable when you read some of his stuff, but at the same time they're just so good, strange, bizarre. Who thinks of these images? Who comes up with this? But again, masterfully done. So this is really good. After that, I read The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman, I think is how you pronounce the name. I'm not really sure. Honestly, I was a little underwhelmed. I think I read it at the wrong time. I couldn't really put myself fully into the book, so I know it was more on the comedy-ish side, but I just really couldn't fall into the book. I finished it. It was a little disappointing for me. I would love to try to reread it to see if I enjoy it, but I don't know, man. This one, I don't think it was for me, but I know a lot of people love this book, so maybe don't take my word for it. After that, I started a cozy mystery series that I talked about yesterday, Caught Dead-Handed, a Witch City Mystery by Carol J. Perry. This is the first book in a series, and it's so cute, and I loved it so much. It was perfect for the fall season. It follows this, she's like mid-20s, late 20s. She goes back to her hometown of Massachusetts and she's trying to get a job as this TV host for a local news station, and she gets a job as being this prophet. It's all just for show and whatnot, but then she gets scrambled in this mess, and I don't want to go into any more details, but it's really, really good and I highly recommend it. And then I read the second book, which is called Tales You Lose, and this one was again just as good. I loved it so much. More romance, more mystery, and I can't say anything in particular because of spoilers, but it's really good. After that, I read Christine by Stephen King. I've wanted to read this since I was a kid, and I don't know why it took me so long, but I'm pretty sure I got this from the library this year and I loved it so much. I love Stephen King. Stephen King, at times his endings just drive me crazy sometimes, but my goodness, he writes such interesting, compelling stories, and I love what he does with just these random odd storylines, like this evil car killing people. It was so good. You should read this. After that, I read The Box in the Woods by Maureen Johnson. This is a part of the Truly Devious trilogy that's now a series. I thought it was only 3 books, and then I guess she continued it, so I read this next book in the series and it was really good. If you love a good young adult mystery, thriller, crime story, this is the perfect one for you. And then after that, I read a 7-book long series. 7-book long series. I read the Septimus Heap series by Angie Sage. Sorry, I can't talk. We're getting to that time where my tongue is getting twisted and words don't make sense that come out of my mouth. I apologize. But the first book that I read is Magic. The second book is called Flight. The third book is called Physic. And the fourth is Quest. And the fifth one is Siren. And the sixth book is Dark. And the 7th book is Fire. And I read all of those. They took me like 2 months to read all of these, maybe even longer. This is a really good young adult series if you love anything magic-y and fantasy. Actually, it's not young adult, it's middle grade. What am I talking about? It's really great. I do want to film a review on the full series, so I'm not going to say much, but I really enjoyed them. If you love Harry Potter, Percy Jackson, any of those, you would love this. So maybe check it out if you haven't. The last book I'm going to mention is called Smithy by Amanda Desiree. This is a horror novel that takes place originally in the 70s. A group of researchers and college students go to this one mansion together to conduct a study on this chimpanzee to teach him sign language and to make a breakthrough in a study. But while they're there, the mansion is also haunted with ghosts, and this poor chimpanzee is haunted by this creepy ghost, and everyone is affected, and things go crazy and hectic, and it turns bonkers. And it was so good. I loved it. It also has an ambiguous ending, so it's definitely not for everyone, but man, I love a good weird story that feels like it's from the 80s, and that's what this felt like. So yeah, anyway, that's all the books that I read so far this year. Those were the 31 books that I read. I read enough, I think. I wish I would have read more, but you know, whatever, it's okay. I'll do better next year, hopefully. I would love to know if you've read any of these books in the comments below. Tell me your thoughts and opinions. Are there any books you want me to review? Let me know also. I would love to know, you know, your favorites and the worst books that you read this year as well. I'm gonna make more videos soon, so yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you very soon. Bye.